Today continues in yet another long day, another day in a long process, which feels like for me at the current moment that it's been about a year. I feel like I've been in this coaching search for 6 months. But Lane Kiffin did take the podium today for Egg Bowl week. And it has been reported, I think you know and I know, regardless of what LSU says, regardless of what Florida says, regardless of what anyone says, the top target for Ole Miss to retain their coach, Florida and LSU, is Lane Kiffin. Guys, there are going to be reports from people that come out and they say, listen, we really weren't after Lane Kiffin. We never spoke to Lane Kiffin. Guys, that's all a lie. You can't ignore it now. And if the trip to Baton Rouge didn't mean anything, guys, why would they have been here? You know who you're going after. We know who we're going. We all know this at this point. So, to recap what we kind of briefly in this long saga have gone through, Saturday we talked about this in the postgame. A direction from Ole Miss came out on Friday where their chancellor and their AD, Keith Carter, came out and said, Coach Kiffin will make a decision after the Egg Bowl. And I had a lot of pretty harsh words for Ole Miss. I think they were deserved. I think Keith Carter, quite frankly, has been pushed in a locker here over and over again. I think he did leak the ultimatum. When he leaked it to get pressure on Lane Kiffin, him and Jimmy Sexton didn't balk. And then when you went to why do you have to have a meeting if he wants to stay? You're giving him an ultimatum, sign this contract or you're gone. And then he said, make me. Make me. It's like the guy at the bar who bows up for a fight and says, you want some of this? And then you stand up and he sees you and he's like, oh, you go, oh. You can't back down. You'll look bad when you do it. Let's call it what it is. Ole Miss fans are defending Keith Carter. It is your right to. I'm telling you. Lane walked in that meeting and said, do it then. They didn't. He got what he wants, which he's been getting the entire time because you have constantly gone through indecisions over and over again. So you fast forward to Saturday, you fast forward to Sunday, and a lot of people thought on Sunday, hey, man, as bad as this has gotten, is Sunday going to start a day where Lane Kiffin's not going to be the head coach of Ole Miss? Then today happens. You go all through the day yesterday, and guys, to be blunt with you, there were some things that I heard there, but teams are battling in this. Florida's battling, LSU is battling, Ole Miss is battling. I do feel like that Ole Miss thinks that they're just out because of, again, yet today, Lane Kiffin's actions. So Lane Kiffin went to the podium today and was basically said, I'm going to talk about the game. I am going to talk about the players and going into this game. I'm not answering your coaching questions. Didn't stop Ole Miss people today in his press conference from trying because they did. 3 times today, Lane Kiffin was indirectly asked about the ultimatum. He was asked about the decision, and he just said, I'm not answering that. Quite frankly, I'm not answering it. It just continues to point in the direction that he's leaving. Guys, I got to be blunt with you. Regardless if he stays or he goes, if he stays at Ole Miss, everyone's going to be like, they were trolling us the entire time. They might even backdate that he actually signed the contract. That would actually be in bad faith, though, and I think Jimmy Sexton wouldn't do that after the governor kind of put some pressure on him. I think Jeff Landry would go after him if that happened, and he would deserve to. With that being said, he's not trolling here, guys. The reason that I know that he's not trolling here is because they are talking to LSU about potential guys and players, or coaches that potentially would be on Lane Kiffin's staff. What is the ultimate autonomy that he would have? Now, I had a super chat earlier from Rolo about like Austin Thomas. Guys, I got to be honest with you. I am going to bow out on this. I think it's all speculation of who stays and who goes at this point. Gus, Lane Kiffin hasn't even been hired yet. Do I think that everybody, both at LSU and Florida, have an idea of what would happen if he were to take their head coaching job? Yes, I have a really good inclination that everybody knows. A part of that, too, is like Ed Orgeron being reported that Ed Orgeron would potentially be on Lane Kiffin's staff if he comes to LSU. Well, that leaks out because of Ed's agent, got that part confirmed. The Orgeron camp has not kept their mouth shut. That, listen, if Lane does decide to come here, I had told him I would be your D-line coach. Good on Ed. But vetting has happened. In reference to Austin Thomas, I don't know. I mean, Austin did leave Lane. How does Lane, who has kind of been petty to some extent in all of this situation, is he petty against Austin Thomas? Does he bring his GM? Now, if you listen to the Florida side of things and you bring up like Austin Thomas as an example, like Florida people are saying that they think that they could have screwed up a little, or Strickland could have screwed up, their AD could have screwed up a little bit because he kept interviewing GMs for the football program, and it seems like Lane wants to have that autonomy. He wants to bring his guy Glasscock with him, or if he stays or if he goes, that's who he wants. In reference to Austin Thomas, guys, I just don't know. I don't know what will happen with staff, nor am I – guys, we haven't even hired the man, and we're talking about potential staff. I just think that that's foolish. But want to know why it's not a troll job? Because those conversations are happening. You're not going to spend that amount of time in conversations about all these intricate details if you're not really looking into it and getting all the information that you can get. It's not a troll. If he does not come here or if he stays, it's just not. And that's the reality of it. But to the main point, Lane just refuses to answer these questions, which then gives LSU and Florida hope. You know, as these things continue to go on, I haven't given like percentages. This is where I've been the entire time. I saw a report today. Somebody wrote like a report on CBS saying that Blake Ruffino said that at one point he was 90%. I was never at 90% saying LSU. I've stated the exact same. I'm at 40 LSU, 40 Florida, 20 Ole Miss. And quite frankly, you can go 45-45 for all I care and go 10 for Ole Miss. I just don't think he's going back. I don't know if he's going to be allowed to. It just every day that he walks the podium seems like he's leaving. We all see this. Now, if he does stay, I just think he had a change of heart and he doesn't want to leave a place that he's built, and that's okay. This is played out publicly for calendar issues, and I'm not going to continue to go down that. But there were a couple of questions that Lane Kiffin was asked today. Brad Logan, who we've had on the show multiple times, asked Lane Kiffin, you're 2 wins away from a winning percentage standpoint from being the winningest coach in Ole Miss's history. And I thought Brad asked a really good question. I like Brad. Brad does an amazing job. Y'all should go follow him from the Ole Miss side of things. I don't think Lane wants to stop coaching this team. I don't. If there's one thing that I don't want to say can throw a wrench in this because I'm going to talk about it, but if you ask Lane, he wants to go until the season's over. Whether a decision's made beforehand or not, regardless of that, he wants to coach this team. So if Ole Miss allows him, if Ole Miss allows Lane Kiffin to coach the Egg Bowl and to coach the playoffs, guys, there's a chance that he's hired somewhere and that it's public and that he's still the head coach of Ole Miss, kind of like Scott Frost and that whole situation that he had. Now, I don't know if Ole Miss will do that, but the balls are in their court. Pause. Lane Kiffin's balls are in Ole Miss's court on what he wants to do from a coaching aspect. I don't think that they can win it. Just in general, with or without Lane Kiffin. I also don't think that Ole Miss believes that they can make a push at all without Lane Kiffin. I have no idea what Ole Miss is going to do here. But there is a realistic chance from the Florida side of things and the LSU side of things that, guys, quite frankly, if they allow him to coach during the playoffs, he could be your head coach and not be in here until mid-January, which is okay. Everybody's got to lock things down. This is an unprecedented situation. It is an unprecedented situation. You know, Nick Saban said something the other day, and he didn't want to get detailed. Like, as an example, he knew that when his final year was here, that it was his final year because everything was too aligned for Alabama when it came to hiring Kalen DeBoer for everybody not to know and keep a lid on Nick Saban retiring. You see what I'm saying? And that happened after Kalen DeBoer was done with his national title. You have a national title game. Nick Saban retires spontaneously. He said, I just woke up one day and want to retire. You mean the most meticulous guy and meticulous coach of all time just woke up one day and said, I'm retiring? That was his quote when he walked away. No, that's not true. They did that because they didn't want to ruin the guy that they wanted to be as their next head coach for those things to get out of there. So Jimmy gets with Nick, gets with Alabama. Listen, this is my last season. I'm sure the playoff committee knew it and why they kicked out Florida State and put in Alabama. Nick Saban's final ride here. Regardless of what happens, I'm done. It was unprecedented then. But they played it out to make the calendar, which that was only a 14 playoff, to happen. I look at this situation that there is a chance. I don't think I don't think Ole Miss does it. But there is a chance that Lane Kiffin hired anywhere because he might not be in that building and you might not have a press conference until January the 10th. There's that likelihood. The reason I think that there is that likelihood is I don't trust Ole Miss in this situation. You had to have a meeting about you had a meeting about a meeting that's going to happen in a week. Yeah, spare me. So is Ole Miss going to tell him to take the hike after the Egg Bowl? Guys, I will be honest, I have no idea. But either he's going to coach this thing out, and if he's your next head coach, you're not going to have him until January 10th, which quite honestly doesn't bother me as long as we have that decision. Or you get to a place where, guys, this thing is done by Saturday, and you're going into Norman, Oklahoma, and you know who your next head coach is going to be. Or you're starting to get information. Or Lane Kiffin stays or he goes to Florida. I think you're going to know, is what I'm saying. You know, like we talked about last Thursday, guys, I don't think that you're going to find out anything on Friday. That was the ultimate conversation. They're not going to fire his ass because he wants to coach. And LSU's not going to say anything because, listen, we don't want to piss off Lane. Florida's not going to say anything because they don't want to piss off Lane. Look, you can coach the Egg Bowl for all we care. We don't care. And then Ole Miss is like, well, we can't suspend him or fire him then because LSU's letting him and Florida's letting him do whatever he wants. It's going to get tricky. Now, if you want my opinion, here it is. My opinion is that you're going to get an answer by Saturday, potentially Sunday. That would be my thought. That is my opinion. Guys, these things change in a blink. What happens today, what we talk about today, can change tomorrow. This is an opinion, not sourced or anything. I think Saturday somebody's going to know who their next head coach is. And Lane's going to make the decision. And you're going to either buy out a contract or Florida's going to buy out a contract, and off you go. And I don't think they're going to let him coach. Now, if Lane Kiffin forces their hand, if Lane Kiffin forces, I'm not going anywhere until I'm done, then Ole Miss might have to fire him. And you start getting into a really big chess game, because why would LSU spend the $6 million, the $8 million to buy him out? Why would they do it? Lane's buyout's a little bit different. You're not paying the $30 million. People see buyouts. If they get fired, they're owed the big buyout. When you pay for a coach for him to leave, it's actually a smaller buyout. I don't know how it's going to play out. I really don't. I think it's going to be an all-out war, because if Lane wants to stay and he wants to continue to coach, and he tells both LSU and Florida, I'm not giving you an answer until they tell me I can't coach here anymore. If he wants to play hardball, then this could get even messier. I don't think all that's going to happen. I think they're going to tell him, listen, man, we're going to suspend you, and this is the legal ground that we're going to do it. You can fight it in court. And when you fight it in court, it's, by the time that we get to any kind of hearing or anything like that, the playoffs is going to be over, and Lane's going to walk. I don't know where he's going to walk to. But I do think all of this is played out, and I think that they know. I don't know if Lane completely knows where he is going yet, but I think that there is a decision by Ole Miss on how they want this to play out. And I think that they're going to try to let him walk. I don't know. I do not know who their interim's going to be. I'm not an Ole Miss guy. I'm only focused on Lane Kiffin here. But Lane was asked, do you want to coach this team? He was asked by Brad Logan, do you want to be the winningest coach of Ole Miss? Guys, he wants to go for it. And I believe him. Everybody in this process has gotten one thing massively wrong, that Lane Kiffin hasn't changed. I'm not buying that. The Lane Kiffin of old would have already left, or would have already done this differently. Guys, go look at how he left Tennessee. He didn't do that one right. LSU and Florida are massively after him. Two bigger programs. He wants to stay, and I believe him. But he also wants to go because he knows it's a better job. I don't blame him. I just don't blame him. I think I look at a guy like Lane Kiffin, who's always wanted to coach one of these blue bloods, and that has been a dream of his. Guys, you all have dreams. You might not achieve them. But what is a dream of something that you've always wanted to do? Guys, I'm living out mine. I suggest that you all go live out yours. You want to do hunting videos. You want to be a guide. You want to be a ballet dancer, for all I give a damn. Go do it. Nobody's stopping you. I think this is over by Friday, Saturday. In the meantime, the question that you all probably came in for is, do I think he's coming here? Is it over? Is all the message board chatter? Is it, what are your thoughts on it? Guys, I see it. Everybody sees it. I just think it's too premature. I do. I think it's premature in the sense of that I think Florida's going to continue to counter here, and they're going to continue to negotiate. I do think by Wednesday this gets really interesting, because I do think LSU and Florida want an answer. They want an answer. So you have Lane being pressured by wanting to go in the playoff, and Ole Miss telling him to stay, and LSU and Florida want an answer. Are we going to get the answer that we want? I haven't brought this up all coaching carousel when it comes to Lane Kiffin, but I'll end it on this before we get to some super chats. PTSD is not the right way to say it, because there are people that struggle with PTSD that I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I just don't know how else to say this. The Tom Herman, Lincoln Riley thing for me, that whole situation does give me PTSD in the sense of I've heard you say a lot of shit before from the LSU side of things. Now, I hear things from the LSU side of things. Then I call nationally, and it's not the same tune that you're talking. Can LSU close? Which is the only thing that matters. One thing today that I learned is that Do I think that Lane has a pretty good idea of where he wants to go? Yes. Do I think anybody knows that besides himself, Jimmy Sexton, at this exact moment, even his family? No. And the reason I say that is he did not tell his family that he was going to Auburn until he had already made the decision with him and Jimmy. This is going to start getting interesting, very interesting by Wednesday. Very. Whether you have a decision by then or not, hell, the timeline can move up. The timeline could be tomorrow for all I know. I do think it's Wednesday that happens. All right. Back up. No one knows. No one, I don't think a formal decision has been completely made. I think that LSU has gotten some answers that they like, and I think Florida has as well. And as this goes on, two sides collide here. I will just say this. I do not feel this way, but I feel like LSU as a whole and the people that I talk about feel very confident. I am not there with them. I'm also not in those meetings. So we'll see.